I can see an entire new conference now on the role of olive oil in history and how much was used for fuel, how much was used for cooking, and how much was used for finishing off dishes. I can see a new conference coming on. Anyway, that would be for another day. First of all, can I say what a great honor it is to be here again in Italy. I'm going to be moderating and chairing this next part of the conference. My involvement began when I met Paolo for the first time a couple of years ago in London, and I think Paolo was seeing me talking about the Mediterranean diet and probably wondered what an Englishman could be doing speaking about the Mediterranean diet. But soon after that, we shared our passion for all things Mediterranean and olive oil. And I came and visited Villa Campestri and met up with Francesco Sofi, one of my heroes from all his publications on the Mediterranean diet. And from that was born food values and how we promote the Mediterranean diet and how we act on some of the amazing science and some of the wonderful passion that we have for food and health. And so following on from the conference in the Vatican, for which we were very grateful and privileged to have the support from His Excellency Monsignor Sorondo, we find ourselves here today at Food Values 2. So before we go on to the main body, I just think it was fascinating to see that some of the history, because I think this conference and this series of conferences is about how we rediscover some of the ancient traditions around food and how we can apply them to the modern world to improve health. So it's fitting that we heard about the role and value of food in history. So we're now going to have three very eminent speakers on some of the science of the Mediterranean diet, and then we're going to have an open discussion and questions from the floor. So there'll be a series of 15-minute presentations. So first of all, I'd like to call Professor Antonia Trichopoulou to come to the stage and talk about the Mediterranean diet. When the history of the Mediterranean diet is written, and when its reintroduction in modern times, and now it is recognized even in the US as being a very healthy modern diet, when the history is written, Professor Trichopoulou will appear large in that. She has been an absolute tower, a pillar of the research into the Mediterranean diet. So it's a great privilege to hear Antonia again talking about her involvement and the science around the Mediterranean diet. Antonia.
It's really a privilege for me to take part of this in this conference, and really I thank a lot the organizers to give me this opportunity to be here with you back to Italy, back to Florence, which is a beloved country to me. Well, I'm going to, in my presentation, speak about the role of the Mediterranean diet to health, environment, and the traditionality of the foods. I think that's very important, at least in the context of this presentation, to tell you what is meant by saying Mediterranean diet, because this term has been used excessively the last years, but the way it was used by a group of scientists is that when we are saying Mediterranean diet, we mean the Mediterranean diet. It's the dietary pattern found in the olive-grown areas of the Mediterranean region in the late 50s and early 60s. Why in the olive-grown areas? Because Mediterranean diet do not exist without olive oil. And why before the 50s, 60s? Because after that, as you know, big socioeconomic changes happen in the area, and we change dramatically our dietary habits. Besides that, talking about Mediterranean diet, we are talking about the Mediterranean lifestyle. Mediterranean diet is not only limited to foods. In this basin, for more than 5,000 years, people merchant these boats, even ideas and religions, they have converged. So now we, the Mediterranean, we shared a lot of things. As a result of that, in 2010, Mediterranean diet was recognized by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage. Because Mediterranean diet, as I mentioned before, dieta in Greek means way of life. It means lifestyle. That's why when in the pictorial representation of the Mediterranean diet, we are not only restricted in describing the foods, but we are mentioned also that Mediterranean diet is adequate rest, is conviviality, we share the meals we together, is biodiversity, and its traditionality is the way we are cooking. The way we are cooking is very important because we are talking about olive oil, that is the center of the Mediterranean diet, but we will not drink olive oil. We are using that in cooking. That's why we consume olive oil. But this is another big story when we are going to talk about the relation of olive oil and health. And again, in this UNESCO declaration, in the rationale written by the UNESCO in order to support the candidacy of the Mediterranean diet in order to be included in the list of intangible cultural heritage, it was mentioned that the Mediterranean diet is a social practice based on the set of skills, knowledge, practices, and traditions ranging from the landscape to the cuisine. I think that being in this place in Mugello, I mean, this is more evidence what is meant by this sentence. It also manifests through related festivals and celebrations. Thanks God, we have a lot of celebration in this area, and then even the painter, when he was forced to take out the foods from the table, he renamed the Last Supper as a feast in the house of, I don't know who, noble person of that era. And then we have intercultural dialogue. We speak together. We share many things in the Mediterranean, as I mentioned before. Here we are from Spain, from Italy, from Greece, and it will have been from many other Mediterranean countries also present. And we speak in a way the same language, not literally, but in terms of habits and of traditions. Well, very briefly, the main characteristics of the Mediterranean diet is, of course, high consumption. The olive oil is the central, is the pivotal in the Mediterranean diet, but it is a high consumption of legumes, cereals, mostly unrefined, and the cereals in the Mediterranean country, it's used in a different way. In Italy, it might be pasta or bread. In Greece, it's bread. In North Africa, it's couscous. But it's always cereals. So, I mean, the main characteristics, they are shared, but with some variation from region to region. Next, please. And then, but when we're food, talk also about the Mediterranean diet is associated with. There is a lot of evidence, both from cohort study and randomized control trials, that Mediterranean diet has been proven is associated with longer life, is associated with a reduced risk of several chronic diseases, and even today they are studying, and there are some indication that is associated with a reduced dementia, which is the curse of our era. So the evidence is overwhelming, but we're not talking when we're talking about our dietary habits, about proteins or polyphenols or about lipids, but we're talking about foods. And so one could say that the traditional Mediterranean diet is associated, on the one hand, with longer survival, but this could be partly attributed to the traditional Mediterranean foods. Because every day we are eating foods, and we have to focus on how the traditional Mediterranean foods, they were prepared. if we're going to talk about biodiversity, if we're going to talk about environment, by definition, we have to look to the grains. We have to see to the cultivars. And then we discover slowly, and here in Italy they have done excellent work both in the north as in the south, about the various cultivars. I didn't have with me the paper to put in my slides, several kinds of cultivars of beans. They have additional properties than the one which they are imported and they are producing massive. Next to that. Again, there is a tendency also to work on the sourdough. How? This means, I said that it's not only the grains, but it's also the way the bread is produced. The use of sourdough to the bread provides additional beneficial effects on this bread. So I have to take care of the ancient variety of the various bread, and the activities also, there are activities in Puglia in the production of pasta, according to pre-order local product. You are affiliated with the environment. Next. So, traditionally, we were using local foods. They didn't circulate thousands of miles. We didn't eat mango every day. We were eating local fruits. So it's time now to work again about definition. It's very important when we're using a word to know what this word means. What it means Mediterranean diet. And of course, we have lower gas emission. So by definition, the Mediterranean diet, and it has been accepted that by the Food and Agricultural Organization, is a model of a sustainable diet. Next. So, closing, I want to say that there is accumulating evidence that Mediterranean population are departing from their traditional diet. Even at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that when we are talking about Mediterranean diet, we are talking for the diet before the 60s. So, this is an issue, this is a big issue. And to me, next slide, it's very, very important to focus on the children. To focus on the children because the children of our generation, they are not the memories of the foods which we have, the smell, the taste. And they will not remind to them anything when they are going to become parents. So it's very, very important to focus on on teaching our children the traditional Mediterranean diet. And I think it's very important the World Health Organization action on reducing marketing pressure on children. There is a terrible marketing pressure on children. Thus, I think that as individuals and as a member of social group, we should do our best to transmit our knowledge to the young generation. And if we're doing so, we contribute to better health, we preserve our cultural tradition, we support agricultural economy, and finally we protect the environment. Thank you.